September 11th, I was working in a large corporation in downtown Dayton, and we heard the news of the first plane running into the World Trade Center. Disbelief. Scrambled to find a little TV in a storage closet, and two of us were watching this TV. All of a sudden there were 5 people, 10 people, 25 people, 50 people, and then it was 9:03. And we watched the second plane run into the second tower, and our confusion and disbelief was now terror, heartbreak, more confusion, and we realized that this was no accident. And personally, I probably had a moment of panic myself because my little brother, my best friend, lived in Manhattan on 14th Street. And that's all I could think about was, where was he? You know, was he okay? Had he decided to go up there and have breakfast that morning? And so me, the one that's usually pretty calm in a crisis, flew to my office and tried to call him. I remember hitting that redial button probably 100 times. I couldn't get him. And that was a scary time. You wonder how many other people were doing the exact same thing. And I was lucky because he called me in about an hour. He had been up on his rooftop of his apartment building watching the towers burn and ultimately watching them fall. And he's a pretty cool cat. But I'll tell you, at this moment, he was inconsolable. He loved New York City. And I wondered, how is he ever going to be the same? You know, how are any of us ever going to be the same? And I guess the answer today, 10 years later, is that we're not the same. And in some ways, we're more vulnerable. In some ways, we're more patriotic. In other ways, we are filled with more fear. And maybe in the best of ways, maybe we have found a faith and strength of faith to carry us through tough times that we never knew we had. But we know that we will certainly, none of us, ever be the same.
My wife Ann and I were in Washington, D.C. on September the 11th. We saw all the things happening in New York on TV and felt quite helpless about the whole situation. Since we had no family there to share and talk through it with, we decided to leave the hotel and walk around. We left the hotel, and just as we were entering a coffee shop, we heard a loud boom. Not knowing what it was at the time, we went into the coffee shop, got our coffee, and left, heading to the Smithsonian. We were going up the steps to the entrance, and there was a guard outside with a gun, a big gun. And I said, what's happening? He said, didn't you know a plane just hit the Pentagon? And of course we were speechless. It was happening to us there as it did in New York. And I looked around and you can literally see things changing right before our eyes. We could hear sirens in all kinds of directions. There were these black government Suburbans driving by at high rates of speed, heading all over town, it seemed. People were starting to leave the buildings like ants leaving an anthill, and we knew things in America would never be the same.
So I was living in New York City, and my brother-in-law woke me up one morning with a phone call and said, "Get to your roof as soon as you can." And so I left my room, and he didn't even tell me why. He said, "Just get to your roof." So I ran up the stairs and went outside the doors and found several other people on the roof watching one of the buildings of the Twin Towers burning. And it was behind the other building, so I couldn't really see what was going on. It just looked like the building was on fire. And as I watched, another plane came from the other side and struck the building that I was looking at. And it was like something ripped out of my gut. I didn't really know what to feel. I just didn't understand what was happening in front of me, and we all stood on the roof in disbelief. I didn't know anybody else up there, but we just watched together. Over the next hour, we watched the flames grow, and then the first building fell, and the white smoke and debris blew up our building and over us. And we stayed and we watched. And we saw people jump. We saw people fall. And then we saw the next building go down.